Good morning, and welcome to the Energy Perspectives Group webinar hosted by Basin Uranium. This event is being recorded. During the presentation, all participants will be muted. If you have any questions you would like to ask, please type them into the chat feature. We will read and answer questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now here's Dan Steffens, who will introduce today's speaker.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have, I think, 54 EPG members have registered for this one. So I'll give it a couple minutes for them to all get on, but it looks really good. I'm eager to learn more about today's host company because I believe that nuclear energy is the only source of energy that has the energy density to come anywhere close to delivering the carbon-free baseload electricity demand that's on the way, that we are going to see a significant increase in electricity demand for crypto, for AI. I was interviewed on a Washington station the other day, and they brought it up that there's some reports that say the power grid has to expand by 70% this decade, which is going to cost trillions. But wind and solar is not ready for prime time, and it cannot be ramped up enough to meet that level of demand. So we're definitely going to need to go to nuclear at one point. And Europe and China is, we're going to talk about that. But today's webinar is hosted by Basin Uranium Corp. It trades in Canada as NCLR and in the US as BURCF. That's BURCF, so you can check those today. But it's a junior exploration company engaged in mineral exploration and development activities in Canada and the US. It explores for uranium and gold ores. The company was incorporated in 2017, and it is based in Vancouver, Canada. Joining me today is Mike Blatty, the company's CEO. Mike is an entrepreneur and geologist with over 12 years of experience in capital markets. He holds a bachelor's in geology from Simon Fraser University, currently sits on several boards of the TSX, TSXV, and CSE. Mike has been involved in all facets of building, growing, and operating a public company, has successfully raised over $100 million in capital over the course of his career. His extensive experience managing public companies gives him an appreciation for the best industry practice with respect to financial risk control and disclosure. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and I'll go on mute. So it's all yours, Mike.
Hey, Dan. Good morning to you and to everybody joining us today. Thanks for the introduction. So I think before we jump into the presentation itself, I'll just give you a quick introduction to myself and my background. So I was first involved in the stock market in the last uranium bull market, which ran from about 2005 to the end of 2007, where the uranium price quickly climbed from about less than $10 a pound to I think it topped out about $146. I was doing a undergraduate degree at that time and was enthralled by the way mainstream media was attracted to the uranium price and the market, and the quick and healthy gains that we're seeing across all facets of the uranium sector, from the large producers all the way down to the small juniors and micro caps. After graduating university, I was working with a securities lawyer for a number of years, where we were actively working in the mineral development exploration industry. We were building a number of mineral companies, helping companies go public, and basically shepherding them and facilitating them through the capital markets. I ended up starting a exploration services and geologic consulting company called Ridgeline Exploration Services, which I ran with a partner of mine for a number of years, about 8 years, and we grew that company from 2 employees to, at its peak, about 60 employees. That company was recently divested to ALS Chemex Group in 2021. And at that time in 2021, I was looking for new opportunities and something new to get into, something I was passionate about. And the uranium industry and nuclear energy kept piquing my interest. By that time, the price of uranium had declined significantly and was in the $30 range. And I got recruited to join a company called Basin Uranium, which I'm now the CEO of. So, Basin Uranium is a relatively new company. We have a very tight capital structure, and we have a number of exciting projects that span Canada and the US. So, without further ado, I'll jump into the presentation here. So our focus is to advance exploration for domestically sourced uranium. There's been a lot of highlights in the news recently discussing the supply deficit that's currently facing the United States. The United States did produce the majority of the world's uranium in the 1960s and 1970s, and that quickly came to an end in the early 1980s with the release of government stockpiles of uranium. It's very typical for governments to stockpile uranium in the 60s and 70s, as it was a new commodity and very important for nuclear power generation. So with the change in the industry has been quite rapid, and we've been going through a very long depressed state in industry. In the 1970s, you had almost a 10-year bull market in uranium, where if you look at the inflation adjusted price, a pound of uranium in 1970 compared to a pound of uranium in today's dollars, the price would have been equivalent to about $200 per pound. So today's price, we're sitting in the low 90s, coming off a new high, intra-year high of about 106, 107, depending what group you're following for the spot price. So if we're gearing up for a bull market similar in scale and extent to the 1970s, I think we still have a lot of price appreciation left in the cycle. And I'm going to be talking about some of the macro and micro factors that I think bode well for uranium, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. As always, I'll be making forward-looking statements in this presentation, so it's our standard company disclaimer. Basin was built on 4 pillars as a company. So my background as a scientist, as an entrepreneur and geologist, I've tried to learn from my mistakes over the years being involved in the industry. So one thing I have learned is, hope is not a good business strategy. Generally, doesn't work out too well. So what we've tried to do here is build a company that's based off of facts and science and technology and best practices in the industry. So one of the pillars to our company is having a diversified portfolio of assets. So we have assets that span countries and span states in the United States. So we have less jurisdictional risk. Our flagship is Cord, the Cord project, which is located in South Dakota. It's along the border of Wyoming and South Dakota, just on the South Dakota side, and about 5.5 miles from Encore Energy's permanent Dewey Burdock project. Recently, we picked up another project very close to Cord, within a few miles, Wolf Canyon. That's also in South Dakota, and it is has a nice historic resource on it, and it complements the Cord. Wolf Canyon, bunch of the deposits in Fremont County, in southwestern South Dakota, were all controlled at one time by Union Carbide, which was a preeminent uranium explorer, developer, and miner in the US. In addition to Wolf Canyon, we have South Pass, which is located in Wyoming in the Great Divide Basin. And we have our Ray Mesa project, which is located in Utah, just outside of Mesa. In addition to that, we do have some Canadian assets. We have a project in the Athabasca Basin called Man Lake, which is near MacArthur River that we did some exploration on a few years ago. And the company's listing property, before I joined the company, we have a gold project in British Columbia called the CHG project. CHG is a interesting gold project, and obviously it doesn't really fit the scope of our company anymore. So, we're in the process of evaluating options right now to potentially spin that project out as a dividend to our shareholders, as it doesn't really fit our company focus and mandate right now. Next pillar we have for Basin is over the years, I've learned that proximity to deposits and even better world-class deposits is key. Uh, most mines are found in the shadow of the head frame, which is old miner talk for best to look for a mine near an existing mine than to go into the middle of nowhere and try and find something. So all of our projects are located adjacent or near production ready assets. This is a good strategy, not only from a logistics and labor perspective, but just a tried and tested strategy that is more effective than going to the most remote, furthest place you can be and hoping you find something.
Hey,
A
Mike.
lot of our
Hey, Mike.
projects are
Can I
yes.
interrupt? Can you click on that little thing in the lower left-hand corner? Click on that hide because it's blocking part of your screen. Okay,
Sorry
great,
about
great,
that.
great. Thanks.
All of our projects have seen significant capital investment from previous operators. So this obviously has helped us immensely in the US, being able to acquire and put together data sets that previous operators spent millions and millions of dollars on these projects. Allows us to get a bit of a head start and build a company for relatively less dollars than going out and doing that work ourselves. So big focus of mine is to acquire and reinterpret, digitize, and put this data into a proper format for use in today's technology-driven age. For 2024, we're looking to conduct our first exploration programs in the US and trying to unlock value for our shareholders through taking all the things we've learned, all the data we've acquired, and putting that to the test through our exploration methods. So what I've been doing and I continue to do is to basically evaluate, reinterpret, and assess in situ recovery or in situ leach amenability on our US projects, including acquiring additional data and building off historic results, as I discussed. There's a huge opportunity to take all of these previous projects, thousands and thousands of projects across the United States, and relook at them through a different lens, through the lens of in situ recovery, and see if there's opportunity there. So our projects exclusively have this earmark, and what we're doing now is taking projects that look good on paper and then testing that thesis in the field. Now let's take a step back and let's look at the macro of the uranium and industry and the supply and demand that's kind of going around right now. Obviously, uranium's had a great run from the low 30s when I joined Basin to a recent high of over $100. But I think there's a lot of things that are driving that. Maybe not everybody's kind of aware of the reasons why the price keeps moving up. So if you go back and you study the history of the uranium industry, after the Manhattan Project split the atom and uranium nuclear power generation became proliferated very rapidly across the world, many countries around the world tried to stockpile uranium. That stockpile, government stockpiles, lasted for a number of years and caused a glut in supply of uranium early on. that glut was then basically sold off in the 1980s, and it caused the price to crash. And it effectively stopped the US uranium industry in its tracks. Fast forward to the late 1980s and the end of the Cold War, and you had reclassification of weapons grade to fuel grade uranium, which had further impact on the prices. In 05, 06, once all these stockpiles were spent through the uranium industry, you saw the price run from $9 to over $140, almost overnight, which was due to supply questions and some supply issues at some of the large mines in the world at the time. There still was significant stockpiles corporately held by uranium companies, but I think the scare of production caused a spike in uranium. Obviously, in 2011 with Fukushima, you had 30% of the world reactor demand was shut down essentially overnight. A lot of countries shifted their policies away from uranium. This caused another bear market in uranium. However, um, you know, when we hit 2018, you had reactor demand above uranium mining supply. And from 2018 until recently, you've seen all of the corporate stockpiles be whittled away to almost nothing. You've seen Cameco, one of the world's largest uranium producers, almost completely obliterate their stockpile over the last years. Now we find ourselves in a situation we haven't seen in the uranium industry, where we don't really have any stockpiles left. We're in a uranium supply deficit. We're seeing a lot of utilities and reactors that are either their life is being extended, or some are actually being reactivated, which wasn't anticipated a number of years ago in the supply demand projections. And also, you're seeing a number of reactors coming on in India and China. So we're getting into a bit of a perfect storm with uranium right now, where things are the wind is at the commodities back. And coupled with that, you have groups like Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, which is buying uranium out of the spot market. They've bought about 60 to 65 million pounds to date. They just closed another big prospectus offering for $1.5 billion. And if you follow their research and the news they put out, their ability to buy uranium out the spot market has greatly slowed. I think in the last 4 months, according to information available on their website, they've only been able to buy about 300,000 pounds of uranium, which obviously is causing a bit of a problem for that physical trust, because they are trying to use that money to buy uranium. So when they're having to hold on to cash and they can't buy uranium, it's causing a bit of a tracking error for them. So why is everybody so obsessed with uranium? Well, I think with all the green energy policies that are going around, not only in the US and North America, but around the world, people are finally waking up and realizing that wind and solar cannot get the job done. And not only that, but nuclear as added benefit has the lowest CO2 equivalent emission per gigawatt hour of electricity over the lifetime of a power plant, which is clearly illustrated by this graph down here. And unlike things like natural gas, oil, coal, biomass, you can't bring on more uranium supply quickly. It takes time. There's permitting challenges, there's development challenges, and there's a personnel challenge. There isn't a lot of qualified people in the uranium industry who can help build mines, help develop new ISR projects, doing the engineering. And this goes all the way down to welding, cement pouring, drilling, So it's an industry that's been starved for capital, therefore has been starved for personnel, and now we're paying for that. So why Basin got into uranium in the first place is there's a staggering deficit in the U.S. and these figures are changing quite quickly. But the U.S. is consuming through its utilities, and not even including defense in any of these numbers, is using almost 50 million pounds of uranium a year. The U.S. is producing under 1 million pounds of uranium per year. So this is in staggering contrast to the U.S. being the leading producer of uranium back in the 60s and 70s. So finally, after 40 years since 3 Mile Island, you're seeing bipartisan support in the United States for reactivation and a renewal in the uranium industry. The United States, at the end of the day, they want to source their own fuel from themselves. And that's why the government's developing a uranium strategy. They've started slowly. So they've started the formation of a strategic reserve, developing a 20 million pound uranium stockpile, which is relatively insignificant, but it's a start. And also they've started implementing the new Nuclear Fuel Security Act. So trying to create programs that are increasing domestic production and ensuring the availability of domestically produced, converted, and enriched uranium. And mining the uranium is one issue, and then converting it, upgrading it, enriching it is another issue. Still, the majority of that happens outside of the U.S. of A. You have Russia, Netherlands, France being the primary graders and enrichers of uranium. So there still is some issues that need to be solved there, but at least in terms of the mining and exploration and exploitation of these resources, we're moving in the right direction in the U.S. Yeah, it's shocking to see that the United States doesn't even show up on the pie chart of the global supply of uranium, the production. As we move forward into 2040 and beyond, we see very strong demand from emerging countries. What you have, the dark band, is currently operational reactors, and then the light band is proposed, planned, or under construction reactors. So as we move to 2040, we see a doubling of nuclear reactors, and that doesn't include any SMRs, small modular reactors. This doesn't include extending the life of current reactors. So there's going to be a huge demand for uranium, and it's very hard to get your uranium mine online. There hasn't been a new one in over a decade, and even with Next Gen's Arrow and Denison's mine coming online, they're saying 2028, but it'll probably be more like 2030. That won't even be enough to help normalize and balance out the supply and demand issues. At the end of the day, energy is life. Energy brings people up from living in poverty or being a third world country, and helps accelerate their development and their growth as a family, as a population, as a country. So everybody understands this, and that's why you see such growth in places like China, India, and South Asian countries. So I don't see any of this slowing any of the uranium price in the near term. We just had the COPA 28 or 24 conference in Europe, and a number of countries and world leaders signed on to triple nuclear power capacity and production by 2050. So, everything that could possibly be going nuclear's way and uranium's way is happening. Now, you can never get too confident and say that things are going to always go up. There's always the potential for black swan event, for increased global conflict, for natural disasters that can affect the industry. But the things that are being laid, the foundation that's being laid, paints a very bright picture for uranium. Now, just before I get into the cord, I guess the one other thing I kind of wanted to mention about nuclear is just how safe it is and how reliable it is. In terms of the reliability, there's the lowest kind of deaths per gigawatt hour comes out of the nuclear industry. There's much higher rates from oil and gas and coal and things like that. You're able to generate a lot of power in a very small footprint, unlike wind and solar. The density of the power is fantastic. Your one pellet of uranium is equivalent to 500 barrels of oil. So it's just really a great place for us to be in. As you see, companies like Microsoft with their AI operations, they've doubled their power usage quarter over quarter. I saw a report the other day for AI data centers, so switching regular data centers to AI-based data centers, and they say that those data centers could use 7 times more power. So with all these factors combined, building out infrastructure, developing these, getting SMRs online, which are very compact and easily permittable, easily scalable. The future is bright, literally and figuratively. Sorry. So getting into the core project here. Core is our flagship. It's located down here in the central portion of the map, located about 5.5 miles as the crow flies from Encore Energy's permitted and production ready Dewey Burdock. Dewey Burdock, they've received their radioactive minerals license from the NRC, and they're currently going through the state process. After they develop their projects in Texas, it's kind of next on their development list. So we're really following closely anything that Encore is doing and trying to support them any way possible. Hopefully one day, if we can develop and build out Cord, they may be a partner for us in the future. Mineralization on the cord is hosted typically in typical roll front style deposits. We have the same geology and geologic features that are seen at Dewey Burdock. We're in the lower Cretaceous in Ucara group. We have the Lakota and Fall River formations are the primary ore bearing formations. This project was run by Union Carbide in the 1970s. Before that, they were proposing a open pit and underground mine at Cord. We're looking at more of the ISR potential, and obviously it was never evaluated back in the 1970s. I've been busy acquiring an extensive regional historic data set that I've spent the last few months digitizing and putting into our geologic models. And the plan is right now we're well underway on commissioning a baseline 43101 on Cord, using that historic data set to build out an inferred resource, which will help us guide our future exploration and development of the project. So, like I mentioned before, past exploration was extensive. Most of it was done through 1976 to 1982. And as we talked about earlier, in the early 80s, uranium price crashed to less than $10. And a lot of these projects were mothballed. and the companies were disbanded. And, now 40 years later, we're coming back and seeing this great renaissance in the US nuclear industry. So in total, this is kind of the historic resource from a lot of the PFS and mine plan reports that were done by Union Carbide. And we're sitting, depending on the categories and using potential versus measured and indicated, we're kind of sitting in that 2.5 to 4 million pound range, which is a great start. And I think there's a lot of really exciting blue sky and exploration potential on the cord that we're going to hope to unlock in our exploration programs that are upcoming. So one of the things that we've been able to acquire and add to the project is state land that's immediately south of the cord. So this state section 36 is about 640 acres. It lies immediately south of the October Jinx mineralized body. Now, October Jinx is the largest mineralized body on the project currently, and it hosts the best potential for expansion. Union Carbide was able to drill essentially right up to the boundary of the state section, but they never acquired this and pushed forward with additional exploration. So our focus is to really try and chase this mineralization down gradient from the October Jinx. So right now we're permitting for about 50 wells on the state section. And we're also in the process of starting to monitor and assess historic monitoring wells, hydrogeologic monitoring wells that are left on the property. So we've done an initial assessment last summer where we confirmed that there is a significant amount of water in the monitoring wells. There's a significant amount of head pressure. And, it does appear that there's enough water to be ISR amenable, but that's just one of many factors that need to be considered in the in situ recovery process. So we're going to be working this year and in the coming months to continue to try and prove that this project has the potential to be in situ ISR amenable. So a lot of these mineralized bodies are open, and we're also looking at acquiring additional land to the south. So the land to the south, outside of the state section, is split estate. So it's a little bit more of a straightforward process for permitting, but we're in the process of doing that along with developing and staking other targets in South Dakota. So in terms of a bit of a timeline for permitting, South Dakota is a bit more of a difficult permitting state than the Wyoming, our neighbors next door. It's South Dakota is not an agreement state with the NRC, so Wyoming and Texas are two examples of agreement states where permitting typically is a little bit more straightforward. Now, with that being said, Kristi Noem, who's the governor of South Dakota, they've just tabled a new bill in the House in South Dakota, Bill 1071, where they're looking to become more in line with the processes that Wyoming and South Dakota have implemented for uranium exploration, development, and production. So we're following that closely as a company and hoping that South Dakota does get back on track to being, it used to be one of the preeminent uranium producing states in the United States. At one point, there was over 300 known deposits and or mines in and around southwestern South Dakota. So for permitting, we've submitted our permits as of January for core. Right now, we're in the review process. We're in the planning and about to kick off some of our field studies. So we'll be doing some raptor studies, some environmental studies, and cultural studies. If everything goes smooth, we're looking to get our rigs out there at the end of summer, July, August 2024, and commence drilling on the state section to the south. Wolf Canyon is a recent acquisition of ours. We're sitting about 8 miles to the southeast of the Cord project. Wolf Canyon, similar to Cord, historic resource on the property with good access, good location. This project is also on split estate land, the majority of the historic mineralization. So it's exciting one for us, and one that we're going to add to the Cord complex with another number of other projects like this. So this is part of our strategy, similar to what Encore has done over the last number of years to add these historic projects, assess their potential and their amenability, and then to prioritize exploration and development work accordingly. Moving over to Wyoming, we also acquired the South Pass project, which is on the Great Divide Basin boundary. It straddles Fremont and Sublette County. Great being in Wyoming, the permitting regime and exploration timelines are a lot shorter. We're located about 80 miles away from Lost Creek, Lost Soldier, which are two important deposits that are nearby here in Wyoming. And then we also are located near Encore's Gas Hills project. So there's extensive infrastructure on the project. Highway 28 is next door, and extensive all-season roads to access all areas of the claims. Back in 1960s, this project was explored and developed by Rocky Mountain Energy Corp, which is a subsidiary of Union Pacific Railroad. This project fits the bill for ISR potential with mineralization at depths of 400 feet and deeper, and typically well-defined water table at about 90 to 120 feet in this part of Utah. So Great Divide Basin has host resources of over 270 million pounds. Our project, South Pass, does have a historic resource of about 1.5 million pounds that we can garner from looking at the historic information and drilling information that we do have. I don't have enough information as of yet to publicly disclose that in a 43-101, but I'm working towards getting that information so we can similar to Cord, start the process on commencing a 43-101 to help us move these projects forward. So in parallel with Cord, we're also working on permitting here at South Pass for the upcoming season. Ray Mesa's our uranium project in Utah. It's 308 claims, totaling just under 6,300 acres, located in San Juan County, Utah. This project was the first U.S. uranium project we acquired. It's located in the Uravan Basin. Great access, great logistics, great address. We're adjacent to Energy Fuels' fully permitted production ready LaSalle project, which hosts an M&I resource of just over 4 million pounds uranium and 21.5 pounds of vanadium. I went through the permitting process on this project last year. So we have state and BLM permits in hand for 50 drill holes. This project, because of the high tenor of vanadium, the vanadium to uranium ratio is quite high, somewhere in the 4-to-1 to 6-to-1 range. we ended up doing a deal to option this project off for $4.7 million Canadian to Nexus Uranium, in cash shares and exploration commitments. So we're optioning 90% to Nexu, and we get a 10% carried if they're successful in completing all those expenditures. So for us, why did we do this? You know, Uravan is typically more of a conventional mining district. So the increased concentration of vanadium tends to inhibit the liberation of uranium in solution mining style operations. So, you know, we're going to stay focused on our Wyoming and South Dakota project, and we're going to let friends at NextU develop this in parallel with us, and we'll be there to support them in any way possible. So as in previous exploration, nice thicknesses, nice grades, pretty typical for Uravan style exploration. Looks like they're going to be kicking off exploration here in the coming months. So will be exciting to see them get the first drill holes going since, again, the late 1970s. So moving into the catalysts, always doing modeling of historic data and working on this resource estimates, consuming a lot of my time with our contractors, BRS, who are assisting in the writing and filing of the report. I'm currently staking projects actively in Wyoming, and so looking to add another 2 to 3 projects from our own in-house project generation. So I think that'll provide a bit of a catalyst for our company in the meantime as we work towards our Core 43101 and our drill permitting in Wyoming and South Dakota. And then we're hopeful to be starting exploration drilling in Q3, which for us will be a big milestone for our company. And having a market cap of under $5 million right now, I think, you know, the things that we're doing and the value we're trying to create, there's a lot of upside potential that is going to be coming to the company and to our shareholders over the next 12 months. User management directors, I'm actively recruiting and building out a more uranium-centric team. So Tim Henneberry and BRS, who are technical advisors, they have extensive experience in the U.S. uranium industry, but we're looking to add, you know, a very highly skilled VPX and build out a technical advisory board. So I've been interviewing a lot of great candidates and hoping to have some news on that very soon. Currently, our cap table issued outstanding, we have 16.72 million shares. Our company underwent a consolidation of 4-to-1 in spring of 2023. The reason for this was we had spent about $4 million flow through money drilling our Athabasca project, which unfortunately, even though we did hit uranium at the depth and the grade that we did hit, wasn't really appealing to investors to add significant capital to the story. So we have consolidated our share structure, and fully diluted, we're sitting at about 26 million shares. Working capital right now, just under $1 million. We have quite a number of in-the-money warrants, which we're going to be working to exercise with our shareholders over these coming weeks and months as we ramp up for the 2024 season. So we'll be doing a lot of trying to get a lot of PRs out and doing a lot of shareholder outreach to keep people engaged. Market cap right now, you know, sitting around $5 million here, and shares kind of range bound, trading between a quarter and about 35 cents currently. In terms of our peers, you know, we're sitting at a big discount to a lot of our other US peers. So I think with our prudent strategy and our growing knowledge and growing property portfolio and 431 resource report on the horizon, I think we're poised for a jump in market cap here. And that's even if uranium keeps trading flat. You know, if the uranium market starts ramping up to highs of 2006, 2007 and beyond, and becomes more mainstream, I think you're going to get a lot of investment from groups that normally don't invest in uranium. And that was the cause of the last bull market we saw. The difference being in this one, I think it's going to be a lot longer, a lot more sustained, because even if uranium does go to $200 a pound or 150, you're not going to be able to bring on any more supply any quicker. It takes time, and we're just going to have to wait for that period to come to an end. So thank you very much for listening. It was great to be able to present to everyone today. I will now open up the floor to any questions that people may have.
Okay, Mike, good job, man. Anyway, I got a few questions of my own, and then we'll get into some of the ones that were posted here to the chat board. But I love your quote, "Energy is life." I'm going to be presenting tomorrow on a U.S. energy development webinar, and I'm going to use that. I think that came from Adam Rosenzweig, didn't it? I think I heard him say that. Anyway, very true statement. And one of the things people need to understand is people are not going to accept a lower standard of living, and therefore, the wind and solar is not going to be able to meet energy demand. Nuclear is the only energy source that can replace the electricity that is being generated by coal and natural gas-fired power plants, and also come close to meeting the extreme demand for electricity that's just ahead of us, literally just ahead of us. So anyway, so for me, is Basin's business plan really to prove up high quality projects and then sell them, or can Basin develop large mines by themselves? Because obviously to develop a mine itself is pretty expensive.
Yes and no. Look, in the Athabasca Basin, developing a mine is $1 billion plus undertaking. In the U.S., developing an in situ recovery mine, you're looking at a capex of $25 million to $40 million, right? So it's not, the capex is low, the opex is low, small footprint, very environmentally friendly. So the options are there. That's a little too forward looking right now. Our goal is to acquire these projects, develop them, add pounds to our quote unquote balance sheet, similar to the way a physical trust does, right? Start off, build up to 5 million pounds, go to 10 million pounds, go to 20 million pounds with these quality projects we're acquiring. And then look at if our market cap responds accordingly, if our access to capital responds accordingly, all options are on the table.
Describe the ISR. That's in situ resource recovery, correct?
Yeah, so in situ leach or in situ recovery are kind of the two main terminologies used in the industry right now.
So what do? You pump water down there, and then the uranium comes up in the water, and you purify it out of the stream water.
So typically how it works is a well field is drilled with a significant amount of monitoring wells dispersed around the outside in the upper formations, lower formations. That water is oxygenated, and there's a lixiant added to it, whether it's a basic lixiant or a acidic lixiant, like for example, in Wyoming, most of it uses sodium bicarbonate mixed with the water, and that liberates the uranium from the sandstone-hosted formations. In Kazakhstan, they use sulfuric acid and water and oxygenated water to liberate the uranium. So Wyoming actually just had its first permitted acidic leach plant, Peninsula Uranium. So sometimes you can get higher recoveries depending on the chemistry and the geochemistry that's involved in these formations. So essentially that water liberates the uranium. It's returned through pumps to a central processing facility, and it's liberated back into a solid state in nothing more complicated than a municipal or state water treatment facility that we use every day for our drinking water.
Yeah. When you go back to the slide with for Cord, where you got that timeline, and do you have enough funding to get you through that timeline right now?
Yeah, so look at we're in the process of evaluating our options for a capital raise. Right
Hmm.
now, to drill, my budget for this year is about $1.5 million US. So no, we don't have enough capital right now. We do have about 2 million of in the money warrants that we can call on to be exercised through a acceleration clause. And we are actively looking to do a placement probably within the next 60 days or so.
Okay, okay. Um,
We were we were about to pull the trigger on one in February, but the uranium price kind of went sideways, and I think a lot of people took a step back because when a commodity goes from more than triples,
yeah,
I think people, they think twice about jumping in, right? So it's good, healthy consolidation here at the uranium price, and I think the macro and micro is the winds at our back. So yeah, we'll be raising some capital in the next bit before we start actually drilling on our projects.
yeah. That's like I say, when we got a big spike in oil price when Russia invaded Ukraine 120 and it goes to $120 a barrel. When it pulls back, the people that are not industry people think, well, they need $100 a barrel to make money. No, they don't. They're making a lot of money at 75 to 80. So it's the same way. And I'm sure with, if you got a $90 uranium price, there's a lot of profit margin in these uranium mines if it holds at that level. But like you said, the near term demand for uranium is so strong. I mean, just from the plants being built in China and around the rest of the world. So something's gotta give here. So
From
let's
people that are smarter than me, they say 30 to 40 million pound deficit, right? And
right.
that's continuing going on this year, next year, the year after.
Now, is that when you say pounds, is that pounds of yellow cake or what is that pounds of? Is it,
Yeah, uranium oxide, correct.
okay,
Yeah,
that's what yellow cake is, right?
yeah.
Okay, and then they
So
pure.
that's pounds before it enters the fuel cycle, right?
Okay,
Where they
okay,
have to
okay.
enrich it.
Yeah. So like uranium ore, let's say. So anyway, a couple of these are just statements, and I'll let you can comment on them. Kevin posts President Carter's ban on spent fuel processing, spent fuel reprocessing to prevent weapons proliferation has been a complete failure. Do you see reprocessing U.S. as a means of meeting reactor demand?
Look, I think it will make up a small percentage
Hmm.
of but it will never come close to meeting the supply deficit, right? It's like saying, well, we recycle copper wire, we don't need more copper mines. So
Right.
I think we still desperately need uranium. But anything that we can do when the price gets high enough, it's very worthwhile to recycle that uranium, the spent fuel.
Yeah. Okay, then Larry posts, he's a big believer in uranium industry and has extensive investments in it. Wondering why I do not see hardly any of the officers or directors with extensive past experience in uranium industry development. I guess he's talking about your officer director. Is your strategy just to sell the company to Encore? And based on what I heard from you,
Yeah.
no, you don't know yet. I mean, everything's for
So
sale, right?
so couple of different things. One, when I kind of stepped into my role here, this company was just transitioning into uranium company.
Okay.
So before I started to bring on people that are industry experts, industry veterans, we had to build a solid base, a solid foundation. We had to acquire some good projects. We had to acquire some good data sets. Now, as I kind of discussed later on in my presentation, I've been interviewing people since December and kind of have several different prospective candidates that are going to be hopefully joining Basin in the coming weeks and months here. So yeah, it's definitely one of my top priorities to build out that team, and it's taken longer than I'd anticipated due to the function that the uranium industry in the United States is very small,
Yeah.
and most highly skilled people are already working with companies that for a long time and that have projects that are more advanced than ours.
Yeah. Hey, well, let me ask you, when you say on these projects like Court, what do you actually own? Is it leases? What right? What right? You don't actually own the minerals, do you?
So we have Court is comprised of, yes. So the state section is a lease,
Okay.
mineral lease. Okay, and then the project is USFS and BLM.
Okay. What are the lease requirements? What do you have to do to retain or extend the leases?
So it's similar to other states and BLM in general. It's $165 a year per claim, and a claim is 20 acres that you have to renew every year. So that's September 1st, October 3rd, or August 31st. You have to have your payment in by.
So you've got like an unlimited time if you just keep extending the lease.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you control
Exactly.
it.
So
Okay.
as long as you keep paying, you are able to hold those mineral tenures.
Okay. And so somebody cannot just go out in front of you and top lease. So you
Correct.
can only go so long because
That's
that
correct.
happens in the oil and gas business occasionally. Okay. The timeline, I think we talked about the core timeline. What will draw the most attention to this, the stock, and I think you're thinking if you get all the approval to go forward with the drilling program, that's probably going to be the thing that definitely draws some more attention to the company, I would think, right?
I think the catalysts, we can go through the number one, additional property acquisitions in great jurisdictions that have historic data sets or resources on them.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, publishing a maiden baseline 43101 on Court in the coming months here, hopefully by the end of April. Number three, permitting news out of Wyoming and South Dakota. And number four, exploration kicking off later this year. And the fifth and final is doing accretive deals in Basin. So whether that's spinning out our CHG property as a shareholder dividend to our shareholders, whether that's optioning or joint venturing any of our new projects that we're targeting and staking, because I'm getting a lot of incoming calls on that, or even working with other companies that are in the immediate area of our projects to help advance larger scale projects. So those are kind of the five catalysts that we have moving forward this year.
Okay, great. I just saw a post here. This is by a good friend of ours. We were just down in Mexico with him, but he said he was a summer geologist with Union Carbide in 1975, drilling the Cord project property. He goes, brings back memories. It's small world, man, isn't it?
Excellent. Excellent.
You should
I
talk to
don't think
him.
much has changed from
Yeah, yeah.
1975 on the court.
Yeah, he's actively doing some stuff. So his name's Bill Thompson. I'll send you his contact information. Maybe he's got some ideas for you on some others. Anyway, Jerry asked, what is the weight of U308 in one of those pellets?
That's a good question. So how they mix it with ceramic to help insulate it and prevent it from melting. So I'm not exactly sure
Okay.
off the top of my head.
Okay.
But they're small. They're about the size of your fingertip. So I'm not sure.
That's
It's quite
interesting.
small.
Anyway, I also like your comment of how safe nuclear is. I saw a presentation the other day and said, really, even with 3 Mile Island and the meltdown in Japan, I think there's only been 2 or 3 people that have actually died as a direct relationship, as a direct contact to those deals. So, you can compare that to some of the refinery fires and things that have happened in the oil and gas industry. It's uranium's really safe. So the problem is in the U.S., I think, as I've talked to some of the people in Washington, and they say, we've created this fear around nuclear power plants or something that nobody wants one anywhere close to their home. So that's always been the problem. But we absolutely need to get over it, because we're going to need an all of the above, situation. We need all above energy sources if we're going to come close to meeting global energy demand. So anyway, I don't see. I think
We
so.
do. And look at no one died at 3 Mile Island. The containment vessel worked like it was supposed to work. We avoided any
Yeah.
large disasters. No one died at Fukushima. The group of people that went in to shut off pipes and valves after, one person did die 12 years later. But if you look at actuarial data of
Yeah.
how long 40 people will live, probably one person would have died anyways in that group. And then looking at Chernobyl, well, Chernobyl was, had no safeguards, it had no containment vessels, it had no nothing, and it was used for, weapons productions for Russia, right? So, you can't really, I don't think, draw the same level of safety and security to that disaster.
Yeah, I agree 100%. This is the answer to electricity demand of the future. There's no doubt about it. So anyway, yeah, then Bill or somebody, let's see. Yeah, Kevin puts, I live 5 miles from a nuke. It has significance on the site storage, and I've never heard anyone in the community express concern. Well, that's good. Good. That's what we need more of that. So anyway,
Yeah,
dealing with
and
politics.
it's helpful, right? Because the reason nuclear isn't moving forward at a faster pace is because of the lobbyist groups, the political concern, things like that. So it's hard to move things forward when there's still a large percentage of the population that's against it.
Yeah, I know. That's the same thing. You know what politicians do? They create a fear, and then they say, if you keep electing me, we'll solve this fear. Thing is, the fears are just created half the time. Let's see. One more question here, and then I think that could do it. But do the pebble bed reactors also use U-308? I have no idea.
I'm not sure. Are you talking about like molten salt reactors? Is
I,
that
I
kind
yeah,
of
I don't know.
what?
I have no idea what that means. So anyway, and then Bill Thompson writes, no deaths in Western style reactors ever. Okay, that's good to
That's
know.
correct.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. Okay. All right. Well, hey, I want to thank you, man. I think this is great. We have recorded this. It will go out this afternoon to our global membership. We've really added a lot of members. Actually, since we started the webinar program, which is a couple of years ago, because we were doing luncheons and stuff for companies, but we went to webinars because of the pandemic, and it's really opened up our membership to Europe and Asia. And I do know that some of our guys, especially in Europe, they manage quite a bit of money, and they are definitely into some of the green energy things to invest in. So anyway, thank you, sir, and we'll be in touch. And hopefully this will draw a lot of attention to your share price. And thanks again for hosting it.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
All
Have a
right.
great day.
All right. Thank you. Sabrina, you can lock it up and we'll go from there.